I'm gonna debunk the biggest myth of the 21st century, and that is detoxifying your dopamine system. Because neurologically speaking, firstly, that is absolutely impossible. And number two, dopamine detoxification in the empirical sense, what we know is a lot of bollocks, or in other words, a lot of BS. And so, why is that the case? So, fun fact, literally just now I watched the Kingsman movie. If you guys have ever watched this movie before, it's basically a spy film. And so the first Kingsman, and the reason why I'm gonna draw the relationship to what I'm gonna explain is why I'm gonna explain it is because the following sorry for stuttering, within the first Kingsman movie, we can see that the entire plot revolves around the idea of the top 1% or the highly successful elite, essentially, and they basically create this product within the movie is portrayed as some microchip, and that is basically attached within your neck, and then it kind of influences the decision-making process of your brain, and specifically aggression. And basically towards the end of the movie, you just see people killing themselves because every single person in the world has have that chip, that SIM card as looking chip, and because everyone acquired it because it's free, it kind of develops and changes your entire brain essentially. And so what I'm trying to say is that the following idea or the following message of that movie is absolutely prevalent in today's society, in towards the 21st century. And I'm not saying that in today's world there's people asking us to install some microchips in our brain, even though to some extent that is quite true, frankly speaking. But my point is that in today's 21st century, in today's modern society, our brain is being consistently and constantly hijacked. So that is not good, because if you would like to become a highly successful person, a millionaire, or have a hell of a career, you would like to condition your brain in a format where it is optimal for the success markers that will eventually predict of how successful you become. And so what I'm trying to say is that you would like to optimize your brain in such a way that you can basically achieve unlimited success. And so then the question beholds is, how do I structure my brain in such a way? And so what's important to understand is it is essentially crucial to understand that your brain, specifically the driving force of your brain that stimulates motivation, success, and happiness is dopamine. And so if you guys are in biology or currently studying biology, then you have probably heard about dopamine a lot more times, and you guys probably know more about it than me. And dopamine is triggered within the dopamine system. And so the entire idea or the entire myth, what I explained in the introduction, when they talk about dopamine detoxification, they want to try to rewire the dopamine system. And in methodological terms, that is not wrong at all, because you can theoretically rewire your dopamine system. And in fact, you can rewire your dopamine system to the extent that it is basically programmed for you to become absolutely successful. So essentially, you rewire your dopamine system for the better, for the best. And so what is the issue with dopamine detoxification? Now, let's do it here. Dopamine detoxification. Gosh, I can't even spell it. So the thing is, why dopamine detoxification doesn't work, logically speaking, is because neuropsychologically speaking, you cannot remove or eliminate the dopamine hormones. You cannot get rid of them in the essence of you're not rewarded or stimulated at all. The point is that you gotta react to the right stimuli, if that makes sense. And so what is meant by dopamine detoxification actually is meant by the dopamine reconfiguration. And so So in essence, you're not really trying to dismantle your dopamine system. You're trying to reconfigure it, and you try to reconfigure it for the better. And so my point is, before you can even consider reconfigurating your entire dopamine system, you have to understand what are some of the factors or the driving key components that already heavily damage or influence your dopamine system. And so within the 21st century, there is 3 main reasons of why your dopamine system, or essentially your brain, is being hijacked or essentially hacked. And so the first one is, and it's probably the most obvious one, is all the technology we have around us. And that specifically is the short form content, like literally TikTok, Reels, YouTube. Let me just write that down. I'll just write digitalization, because it can also include stuff like, you know, Netflix or YouTube or long short form content as well. But the reason why I'm saying short form content is because that's perhaps the most damaging one. So just remember short form content, because that's the most lethal one. The second one is the food we eat, and specifically commercial food. And I'm not talking about your mother's cooking or anything. I'm talking about specifically like the bread you eat, or the specific, you know, sweets you buy at the shops, or chips and frozen food, and you guys know what I'm talking about. All that unhealthy stuff that you find in the supermarket. And so those commercial food is highly concentrated to basically maximize the stimulation for your taste buds. And the problem is with that is they try to do it with such a maximum concentration that the input is so much for your system that you have to constantly generate so much input to impact stimulation, if that makes sense. And so what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the food are designed to be consumed with little efforts for your body to basically digest and go through that entire digestion process. And that's not good, because your brain is basically stimulated from minimal input. But that minimal input, paradoxically speaking, is highly concentrated. And so previously, I think what I was trying to explain was that high concentration, that high stimulation will eventually yield high results and high dopamine release in your brain. So basically commercial food, remember that. Very hard to explain. The third and last but not least is pollution. And so, as you guys can see, that perhaps a trend, if you guys are good at spotting trends, is all of these factors are genuinely out of our control. They are literally structural issues. And so if you guys read the 48 rules of power, then you'll understand the following rule is, why go against the game if you might as well play the game? Because you can never bend the rules. You can never change structures and system, and no matter how big your ego is and perhaps how powerful you currently are, it's very, very difficult and takes a lot of time to change and develop structures. And so what we have to do is, and I assume that you guys are just a regular viewer, just as mine, that you have to accept the games and the constraints of how society has been already structured. And essentially what I'm trying to say is, you have to accept the fact that your brain, and specifically your dopamine system, is already being hijacked, structurally speaking, by digitalization that includes your phone, social media, and all of that, commercial food, and pollution. And before you even would like to consider reconfiguring your dopamine system, you need to create routines and habits to minimize these. And so I want to explain specifically in this video is how you guys can practically reduce or eliminate corresponding factors that entice these 3 points, because you guys can do the research yourself and probably know more about it than me. But the point of this video is, once you have settled these three, once they are to, you know, like if this is the healthy range, and you're currently, let's just call it healthy range, and you're like literally over here. So if you reduce it, just get with me the visual analogy here. So if you're like somewhere here, like trying to, you know, like go through the point, once you reduce these three elements, then you basically are within the healthy range, and then from there on you can start establishing your routines. You can start, you know, establishing that dopamine reconfiguration, and then you can start striving for the success that you are striving for. So first and foremost, understand how this influences this, and then once you reduce as much as possible until you reach the healthy range, then we can talk about dopamine reconfiguration. And that is basically it.